Snerdley told me to get right to my point. I didn't know if you had heard this guy Sunday morning with Fareed Zakaria. He was on his show talking about banning all college football. He wants to do away with college football.
What was his name?
Do away with college football, you're going to do away with the NFL, and that's what you've been saying now for a while. And I mean, you've always said, nobody's going to believe that. Nobody's going to think they can do away with football. But this guy was really clever in the way he equated football players with dogs that are used in dogfights. And he said that he couldn't believe all the outrage when Michael Vick was convicted of the dogfighting. Everyone, was up in arms because we're all against dogfighting, obviously. But he said he couldn't believe that no one realized that Michael Vick himself was being used as a dog in a dogfight, because football players are the same as dogs being used.
I'm going to tell you something, Tara. I have been waiting. I did not know this happened. It hasn't been widely reported. I didn't see it. But I have been waiting for something like this to happen. Once the racial component of this enters the fray.
Well, and also that people who love football and who also love animals are going to say, oh, well, wait a minute. We don't want to mistreat our animals, so we don't want to mistreat our football players. So he's going to, using that kind of logic, there are people who would think this is stupid to say to get rid of football. They're going to say, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe it is that bad.
No, I think, possibly. I think there's a different path that this takes. Do you remember this guy's name, by the way?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I do not remember his name, but it was on...
Oh, but you're kidding. Snerdley just told me it was... She can't hear me. Snerdley just told me it was Malcolm Gladwell.
That's it.
Well, Malcolm Gladwell is not insignificant. Malcolm Gladwell is an eminent author. He has a book called Outliers, and it was a bestseller. Malcolm Gladwell is not, he might be a radical, but he's not some Looney Tunes character out there that nobody has ever heard of. I may be confusing him with somebody. There's a guy who wrote a book in which he discovered that the profoundly upper echelon of successful people work at least 10,000 hours at their craft, be they athletes or anybody else. And I'm thinking it was Malcolm Gladwell who wrote that book, but I'm not sure. I could be confusing him with somebody else. But I do know who Gladwell is, and I do know he wrote the book Outliers. Let me tell you how this is going to happen. And what he was saying is akin to this. You have dog fights. I mean, dogs, they're just being used. It's like cockfighting. And dogfighting is used to entertain a bunch of brute, barbaric human beings. And it's a shame, and it's barbaric that we should allow this kind of savagery for our entertainment. So this guy Gladwell goes on Fareed Zakaria and compares football to that. Where this is leading, Tara, the majority of players in the NFL are African American. I can tell you where this is headed. It's not long since Gladwell has now made this comparison. If you're right, if you've interpreted him correctly, and I didn't see this, but if he talked about Vick, and Vick was sent to prison for dogfighting, and the irony is that Vick is in his own dogfight, and the NFL essentially uses human beings in the equivalent act of dogfighting, and they charge a lot of money to see it, then what's going to happen next is somebody is going to say, well, now, wait a minute, the majority of players in the NFL are black, and all the owners are white, and look at what happens to these players. They get concussions, their bodies are mangled for the rest of their lives. Some of them end up with dementia. Some of them die early. What are we doing to our players? How can we be this inhumane? And then, at to it, and it's a bunch of rich white guys who own the teams and are hiring a bunch of black men to do this, to entertain, just like at the old Colosseum of Rome. This is on tap to happen now. Mark my words. Once this guy starts comparing college football and the NFL to dogfighting or cockfighting, it's not long before we hear that the players, no matter how highly they're paid, no matter how well compensated they are, they're still being exploited for the entertainment of a bunch of lazy people sitting in air-conditioned comfort, reveling in this pain and suffering, reveling in these hard hits, reveling in the destruction that is taking place before their very eyes, and applauding it. This is next to happen. This effort to inflict damage on the NFL is an attack on capitalism and capitalists and so forth. And so this is not far away now that Gladwell has crossed this barrier. Anyway, I got to take a break. Tara, thanks.